Mariella Smith, Chair of the Heart Board of Directors. Welcome to this August 7th, 2020 Board of Directors workshop reviewing the Procurement Manual. We're conducting this virtually. Please look, do we have a Pledge of Allegiance? Yes, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if staff would take attendance, please.
Good afternoon. This is Danielle from Hart. If you could please say here when I call your name. Director Castor indicated that she would be absent. Director Harden? Director Harden? Director Kemp?
Here.
Director Knight? Director McLean?
Here.
Director Mechanic?
Here.
Director Miller indicated he would be absent. Director Overman? Director Schisler?
Here.
Oh, thank you.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Smith?
Here.
Director Vieira indicated he would be absent. Director Williams? Madam Chair, you have 6 board members.
Thank you. And our Hart General Counsel, Julia Mandel, will read into the record the rules for participation in the virtual meeting. Ms. Mandel.
Good afternoon. This is Julia Mandel. Thank you for your participation in this virtual meeting, which is being conducted for the purposes of a workshop. The change of meeting location from in-person at the Hart Administrative Office to a virtual meeting is pursuant to Executive Order number 20-179, extending Executive Order 20-69 by the Governor of the State of Florida on July 29, 2020, and Section 120.54 Florida statute. Due to social distancing, the boardroom in the EBOR Administrative Office is only accessible for personnel facilitating the meeting. Please keep your devices and phones muted when not speaking. Muting the sound in the microphone on your device helps avoid feedback. Please do not enable the video camera on your device and discontinue all personal conversations during the meeting. Please follow along with a copy of the meeting agenda and any materials which were sent via email. All presentations will be shared on the screen while presented. Roll call has been taken for attendance and will be taken for voting by Hart staff. There won't be voting today, so that's not really an issue that we need to be concerned with. Quorum and voting results will be announced. There is an opportunity for members of the public who have pre-registered with Hart staff to provide public comments. However, since this is a workshop, no public comments are being requested, nor are they necessary. During the meeting, please wait until the chair for comments or questions from committee or board members for each agenda item as the meeting progresses through the agenda. If you want to provide a comment or ask a question, please signal that you want to speak by activating the hand button in the white circle next to the name on your screen. The hand will turn blue when activated. Staff will read the hands raised in order for the chair to acknowledge, and the participant may unmute their device and speak. Please speak your name before comment. Presenters, please note that all presentations are controlled by Hart staff. Ensure that you state your name, title, and your organization for the record. Please say next slide when needed, and staff will progress through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. And just as a reminder, in accordance with the Hart Board policy, a workshop is a gathering where board members or persons designated by the board may be present at the meeting for any legal purpose, but at which time no official votes are to be taken or policy adopted, and at which public comment may or may not be recorded. Ms. Arthur, do we have any last-minute public comment for this workshop?
No, Madam Chair. No one signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you. So just before we get to the procurement manual review workshop, I will reward those of you who are in attendance with some good news. I just heard from our Congresswoman Kathy Castor that we've got a new federal DOT grant to HART for $2.7 million on the way for electric buses. So we can start our weekend with some good news.
That's amazing.
Yeah, can I just say that's awesome? And she had texted me too, and I was going to ask if you didn't to say it, but I'm so thrilled, and thank you so much, Congresswoman Castor. I know she has really wanted us to have this, and it's time for HART to start to talk about going 100% renewable. But I know that that's not what this is about. But anyway, it's a great thing. I've been trying to work for it for 4 years, so I'm really happy.
That's great news. Did I hear another director who was wanted to be recognized? No.
Yeah, Adam, I just said that's great news. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, we will move to the procurement manual review workshop. And Mr. John Edmondson, Director of Procurement and Contracts, will lead us today through the proposed revisions of the HART Board Policy and Procurement Manual. Mr. Edmondson, welcome. You're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. First, I would like to say it's always an exciting day when I get to stand in front of the board and talk about procurement, so I'm going to add to the good news of the day. Thank you for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the board, today, for the next 5.5 hours, I am going to regale you with tales of public purchasing policies and procedures. Just kidding. I'm hoping that today will be a very spirited discussion about the recommended changes that we're making, why these recommended changes will add some good value and efficiencies to the procurement process for HART, and then how we can continuously improve upon our procurement process. So first of all, can everybody see my screen?
Not yet. Sometimes it takes a minute. We're still not seeing it. We just see your avatar. We're not seeing your screen.
Bear with me 1 second while I try to troubleshoot this.
Take your time. There we go.
Okay. Oops. Wrong screen. All right, so everybody can see the presentation now, right?
Yes, it's kind of little, and we see a side section for notes, but it's legible.
Oh, then let me switch screens and try it a different way.
Mr. Edmondson, you can also share an application, and you could choose the PowerPoint application, and then it would work that way too.
Let's try that instead. Is that good? Is that better, Danielle?
No, unfortunately, that did not work either. I do apologize.
That's all right. Let's try the old-fashioned way.
Hey, John, this is Dexter. If you click on, where you see those ellipses, the 3 dots right next to that one, if you go back to where you were on present, there you go. Click there. Yep. There you go. We're good.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. So a very quick rundown of how we're going to approach today. We allotted 3 hours for this discussion. I think that's going to be an ample amount of time. And I would like to get through this quickly and efficiently for everybody. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along. We're going to quickly discuss the current procurement manual and policy. Just give a quick little background for how it kind of came to be, where we are and why we think that some of the revisions that we're going to talk about are necessary. We'll do a very quick summary review of the approach that we took, why we kind of looked at the procurement manual through a slightly different lens than the lens by which it was created. We will definitely talk about the Carlton Fields recommendations. We'll get very specific about what they asked for or what they recommended and how we addressed those recommendations. We will go over a quick summary of the recommended policy changes, but we will actually dive a little deeper into the actual policy. We'll take a look at it, give everybody an opportunity to read and digest, because that really is the operative document that started, the whole workshop is designed around. And then we'll do a very quick summary of the recommended procurement manual changes. And then finally, at the conclusion, we'll talk about what the next steps are. That's the pretty easy part. So it shouldn't be too long. We allotted 3 hours for it, and hopefully we come in well underneath that. A real quick background, the procurement policy and manual were last revised in November of 2018, and that revision was in response to an FTA triennial review that took place in, I believe, 2016. This is all before my time. And within that that triennial review, FTA reviewers noted that there were a couple of areas missing with respect to just Buy America pre-award and post-delivery documentation and processes. And so the manual needed to be updated to incorporate those items as well. Those revisions were completed, and the board reviewed them and approved them, and et cetera, but also contained within the procurement policy. And I just want to bring this up real quick to give everyone an understanding of the document that we're talking about here. And you might not actually be able to see it, so it's irrelevant. The procurement policy itself, Hillsborough Transit Authority Policy Manual, Section 5-500, which is procurement policies, is quite literally 2 sentences. And the policy itself basically says that the procurement manual in its entirety is incorporated into that policy, and all HART procurement activity will be subject to the requirements of that manual. It's a completely understandable thing to do because the procurement manual is a glorious 138-page beast that is filled with all kinds of technical jargon, legal citations that govern procurement activity, as well as those requirements issued by our various funding partners. And it is a very onerous document to have to read through and comprehend and understand. So I understand why it just was much more effective and efficient at the time to incorporate the manual in its entirety without kind of dissecting what actions were board-related and what actions perhaps might not have elevated to board level. The policy itself, the board policy, provided no specific guidance. Policies did not describe any of the activities that board members are expected to undertake as a result of the manual itself. It just simply didn't do much more than say, go find the procurement manual and then buy stuff according to what's in the procurement manual. So we wanted to add a little bit more definition there. And then any manual revisions, no matter how small or no matter how minor in context, required board review, public input, and a very long, protracted policy revision process, which we're about to undertake. It is, at a minimum, a 2-month-long endeavor. And so when we weigh the requirement, the administrative requirement of going through such a long process to make what can arguably be nearly meaningless changes to the document, we start to understand how it actually becomes almost a deterrent to change, but more importantly, how it creates inefficiencies rather than resolves them. In order to really create a manual that had an impact, that had an effect, and that added value to the procurement process, and not just in the nickels and dimes sense of making sure we're buying things at the best price possible, we, the procurement department, wanted to understand the strategic position of the organization with respect to purchasing, how that strategy or those strategies and those strategic policies translated into tactical and operational components. There are three primary components that drive our procurement processes. It's not just HART, this is just the procurement industry as a whole. There are strategic components. These are the things that identify the mission and the purpose of the procurement organization. They identify what the procurement goals of the authority are. They call out specific governing laws and governing requirements, and then they identify the owners of the procurement functions. There is a tactical component to procurement manuals and policies and procedures. This is where we set the internal policies that govern procurement adherence to those laws and policies set forth by the strategic vision. It sets interdepartmental requirements for how procurement activities are initiated and who owns responsibility for different planning elements and contract administration elements and things like that. And then it also sets the requirements for vendor oversight and engagement for how we as an organization partner with and collaborate with vendors, how we ensure that vendors adhere to contract terms and things like that. Those are all much more interdepartmental and agency-driven and largely implemented by and in some instances driven by practitioners and staff members within the organization who are down there in the weeds with the vendors. And so we took this kind of framework approach for how we approached what the new procurement manual and, more importantly for today's discussion, the new procurement policy really should accomplish. It should set a strategic tone, it should develop tactical policies and procedures, and it should definitely implement operational functions to carry out that strategic and tactical vision. The operational part of it is the definition of the procedures for how we acquire goods and services, the definition for how we administer contracts, the requirements and procedures for audit of procurement awards. We occasionally have to go back after contracts have been closed out and audit the contracts to make sure that we got all the deliverables we were supposed to get, that we were charged the fees and prices that we were supposed to be charged, and that vendors were paid what they were supposed to be paid. Errors happen, mistakes happen, and from time to time those things don't always align. So we in procurement have to go back and audit that process. And so the procurement manual becomes a document that governs that particular activity for us in large part. So that really is the framework that we use when we approached what types of revisions we felt the board would be, receptive to, for lack of a better term, but what would make it more of an understandable, relatable document, process, procedure, et cetera. Because I'm going to be honest, the old procurement manual it reads largely like a set of codified laws. It was drafted using an old American Bar Association standard from back in 2000, and it's just a very cumbersome document. So we wanted to kind of boil it down to its more real-world functional application, and this is the framework we use for that approach. The impact of the recommendations are, again, we're going to differentiate the strategic, the tactical, and the operational components. We want to be able to call out, know, and recognize what is a board policy as it relates to procurement versus what is a board or what is an agency policy versus what is a departmental policy or what is a process. We want to be able to clearly and articulately understand what those are and then carry them out accordingly. We want to elevate the strategic components, get them out of the tactical function of a procurement manual and memorialize them in the board policy. They're important. They are our guiding principles for how we purchase goods and services within the organization. So we want to elevate them up to where they belong, and that's that board policy. We need flexibility for continuous improvement for the tactical and operational components of the procurement manual. And so one of the things that we're using this approach to do is exactly that, continuously improve our procurement processes, continuously learn from previous procurement items and obstacles that we had to overcome, and incorporate those learnings and those new practices into our procurement manual in real time. We want to have them be effective, and we want to have them be meaningful. And we feel it's much more effective to be able to do that in real time versus a protracted review and approval process, particularly for things that are, if I can just be blunt, well beneath the board of directors level. These are things that just don't really need to bother board members with. And then finally, we want to memorialize current policies and procedures. We do things in practice that are intended for efficiency and intended for value engineering within our organization, but they are not necessarily written down in that procurement manual as needing to be practiced as such. And so if I can, again, just kind of be blunt for a second, when a new guy like me comes on board and starts to use the procurement manual in my day-to-day practice of purchasing, I have a tendency to trip up a little bit because the historic practices of the organization don't necessarily reflect what the written procedure is supposed to be. So rather than say, well, let's do away with practices that have proven successful because they don't match what's in the manual, we want to change the manual, make sure that we are capturing those efficiencies and capturing that positive impact in practice in the document the way that it's supposed to be. And I'm frozen up here for a second. There we go. So the next thing that we want to talk about, that was our overreaching philosophy. We are approaching that procurement manual and that procurement policy with a brand new, fresh set of eyes, with the intent and the desire to make it a really very useful tool for the practitioners of the organization and the customers that our procurement department serves, our internal customers and our external customers. That procurement manual needs to become our, forgive the term, Bible. That's what we have to operate out of. That's what gives us our marching orders. So we really want to refine it and make it as useful as possible. Part of some of the obstacles that we have overcome in the past, but that have been recognized by folks outside of our organization, are those recommendations that Carlton Fields made in the wake of the previous investigation. They identified 3 very specific procurement-related actions as recommended for revision that we were perhaps a little bit lacking in and that we needed to kind of shore up a little bit. Those were to strengthen the definition and requirements of the, quote, one-time deviations. They recommended a more transparent reporting for sole source awards, as well as deviation awards. And they recommended that we revise the language relating to the solicitation of vendors for donations or gifts. And so I just want to quickly kind of go over how we approach those recommendations. And again, everybody received ahead of this workshop an executive summary of the recommended revisions that we're making, as well as a copy of the recommended revision to the board policy, section 5-500, and a copy of what the new procurement manual would look like at the conclusion of the review and approval process. So within that executive summary is where we called out specifically the items that Carlton Fields recommended. The first, improving the language related to deviations. Our approach to do that was to clearly define 2 types of deviations. Now, before I go into that, I want to be perfectly clear. No one on the procurement staff or any HART individuals are advocating for use of, in any common manner, deviations. We don't like them. I am a policy and procedure guy. I like my policies and procedures. I like knowing where my guardrails are. Deviations are the absolute omission of those guardrails, and I really don't like them. But I do recognize that there are certain circumstances that will arise from time to time that perhaps fall into the gray area of not quite an emergency, but definitely a higher sense of urgency than standard procurement. So this is what the one-time deviation, I believe anyway, what the one-time deviation section of the procurement manual was intended to convey. Give a little bit of guidance to that gray area. So because of that, we identified 2 types of deviations that have occurred in the past. The first is a full contract that has been awarded without following any of the requirements of a procurement manual. This is where we basically have an entire engagement from front to back that has been designed by staff or by predominantly historically the vendors, and then the vendors present it to a contracting officer, and a contracting officer signs off on it and goes off on their way. Obviously, we want to put that to an end. But we recognize that it has happened in the past, and we hope it doesn't happen again in the future, but there could be the need for it again in the future. The second type of deviation that we identified was we have a properly awarded contract that requires an immediate modification, and that modification is approved or implemented or recommended without having gone through the requirements of a procurement manual as they relate to contract modifications. That way, now the next time a one-time deviation is put forth in a request, we have a very clear definition of what that is. We can identify it, and we can act accordingly based on that. The second thing that we wanted to do, obviously, we clearly defined what the types of deviations are, but we also wanted to very clearly articulate the approval process. There was some, I guess, misunderstanding in years gone by about whether or not the CEO could approve a one-time deviation or simply request a one-time deviation. And so what we felt a best practice is rather than have the CEO be delegated with the authority to approve and execute deviations, we clearly define that the CEO can propose to the board chair one-time deviations that fall under both of those categories. So at that point, it is the responsibility of the chairman of the HART Board of Directors to determine whether or not the deviation meets the criteria for need and can approve or disapprove accordingly. Again, that kind of got a little grayed and muddied in the past. We wanted to be very clear for moving ahead. If a deviation is necessary, this is the hierarchy and the workflow that needs to happen for the approval. The second thing we wanted to do was limit deviations. We have seen evidence in years gone well by that the term one-time deviation was leveraged a little bit to effect several modifications to a document without having to go through the requirements of the procurement manual. Well, we recognize the dangers and the pitfalls of allowing that to continue. So we restricted the deviations. The first restriction is to a contract that has been procured in accordance with all of the requirements of the procurement manual. So we planned it the right way, we solicited it the right way, we evaluated and awarded it the right way. It is a fully vetted contract. Those types of contracts are eligible for only one deviation modification or deviated modification, meaning that the CEO can approach the board chair and ask that the scope of services of this duly awarded contract be altered without following the requirements of the procurement manual for altering those services that were duly awarded. It does happen from time to time. This one is a little bit more frequent than the other one that we're going to talk about, but it has happened from time to time. We recognize that it's likely to happen again in the future, hopefully not very frequently, but we wanted to make sure we were clear that it can only happen one time. We believe that anything greater than that one deviation to a duly awarded procurement really then requires an entirely separate planning and solicitation process, because now you have crept so far away from the base of the scope of services originally solicited that we are in danger of creating a very inappropriate situation. And so we feel that limiting it to one is the most appropriate way to go. The second is for those contracts that fall under that first bullet point, a full contract, scope of services, all-inclusive, that was awarded and executed without following the requirements of the procurement manual or without going through the standard solicitation process, those types of contracts are not eligible for any deviations. We believe in the procurement department that if we have circumstances such that are of such a level of urgency to require the CEO to go to the board of directors and the chair and say, this contract needs to be implemented and executed immediately because this unique circumstance requires that, well, then that need has been met through the execution of that single contract. And any arising need that comes as a result of that can be solicited through the proper methodology. We feel that that's the best and most effective way to mitigate and avoid any potential problems that arise from not adhering to the requirements of the procurement manual. And again, just kind of adds the guardrails to make sure that we are not stepping outside of that requirement because it's efficient. We don't do procurements because they're efficient. We do them because there's a need, and we have a very prescribed and specific manner that we have to do them within. The second recommendation was to improve the transparency for reporting sole source and deviation awards to the board of directors. Now, Carlton Fields didn't say sole source and deviations. They said sole source deviations. We expanded that to be and deviations because we recognize they are two separate, unique functions within the procurement department. So we want sole source awards up there because we need to be transparent with our board. We need to inform them when sole source awards are made because they in and of themselves, sole sources are unique contracting circumstances. They are permissible under specific conditions, and we want to make sure that we are bringing those awards to the board's attention in the event that they would like to have a discussion about the conditions that generated the need for a sole source award. And then, of course, we want to call out the deviations specifically and separately as standalones so that we are transparent in our reporting and so that if discussion is needed for those deviations, we have an opportunity for the board to generate those discussions. The approach to do this for us was sole source awards for clarity. Sole source awards have always been reported in kind of a tabular format in the procurement section of the monthly board report. We just felt that wasn't quite sufficient enough given the urgency of sole source awards, given the unique circumstances associated with it, and really because it didn't provide much of a narrative for why a sole source was necessary. So we wanted to elevate that up a little bit and provide a narrative description of what that sole source award was, why it was required that we do it via sole source rather than a standard solicitation. And we wanted to bring it out to the forefront. So we took it out of, I shouldn't say that, we kept it in the procurement manual in its current form, the tabular form, but we created a second narrative report for sole source awards that goes directly behind the agenda, if I'm correct, and Danielle or Lena can correct me on that if I'm not. But that unique sole source report is now at the front of the monthly board packet so that it draws immediate attention and it doesn't quite get overlooked, and it certainly isn't buried on page 200 of a big, giant report. And then we're going to continue, obviously, to report sole source awards and deviations in the procurement section of the monthly board report packet, and those will just be a tabular version of that narrative report that you see at the very beginning. Excuse me. The third recommendation, there were several recommendations Carlton Fields made. These are the three that are specific to procurement. They recommended that we revise the procurement manual relating to solicitation and acceptance of vendor donations. Our approach was Section 8-109, subsection 6, has been revised, and we can bring that up and take a look at it in greater detail. But it was provided to the board as a whole. We worked with legal and our marketing departments to add very clear and concise guidance on how we solicit for gifts or donations, and really the prohibition against soliciting gifts and donations from current HART vendors, current HART contract awardees. Those vendors who are currently doing contract work for HART, we just kind of excluded them from the process. But we recognize that sometimes we have to do that, and there are vendors out there who have worked with HART in the past but are not working with HART currently, and we felt we needed to provide some very clear guide rails for how to approach those folks. And really the more common circumstance or occurrence is when those vendors approach us. And they have a series, they have a bucket of baseball caps they want to give away. They have a series of, beer koozies they want to give away or whatever it is. We can't accept those things any more than we can, big lumps of cash or checks. And so we wanted to very clearly call out what the conditions are for soliciting vendor gifts and accepting vendor donations. Section 8-109 has that information in it. and I talk very fast and I talk very loud, so if anybody has any questions and wants to interrupt me, feel free to do so. I'm just going to keep on going until I get interrupted or until I finish.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Mechanic.
David Mechanic, you're recognized.
Thank you. You mentioned the situation where you would not solicit gifts or some other gratuity to existing vendors. So presumably that means you are not having that prohibition for prospective vendors. But how do you make that distinction? I mean, the concern over the propriety of that would seem to me to be the same. In fact, it's actually worse if somebody is seeking a contract but does not currently have one. I'd just like to have some explanation on that, please.
Sure, and let me bring up the actual section that we're talking about here. So that I want to give you the exact language, Director Mechanic. I don't want to paraphrase. So I want to be able to show the exact language that we're talking about.
And while he's doing that, I'll just say that, you directors, you feel free to raise your hand at any point, and staff will let me know if we've got hands raised, and we can discuss this presentation as it goes along.
So and you may not actually be able to see what I am looking at here, so hang on one second, please. Okay, so here's section 8-109, subsection 6, and it does specifically say, Commissioner, that all gifts, contributions, sponsorships, or donations are unallowable from vendors or potential vendors. And so we very specifically call out that there is a prohibition against that type of gift or donation. We identify what a gift is, we identify what a contribution or donation is, and then we specifically prohibit that. It also goes along to say that solicitation of vendors or potential vendors for gifts, contributions, or donations are not allowed. It says that a vendor or potential vendor may not sponsor, provide gifts, donations, contributions to or for a heart event like bus rodeo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, employees attending a function or event may accept items like food, pens, trade show, bags, et cetera. So it does actually go out of its way to say we will not solicit any gifts or donations from vendors, but the acceptance of gifts and donations from vendors can only be permissible in this narrow scope of activities.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
And Mr. Edmondson, just pause just a moment here. We do have a hand up from Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't know. If I had known, because it does seem like a huge thing to go through, I would have stopped before. But I think that one of the biggest issues that we have had that has been an area of, I think, terrible abuse has been our deviation policies. And I'd like to kind of go back, because I had several questions about that. And I would have asked at the time, I just didn't quite know that we should inject, and I think it's good to discuss it when it's going up there. But so before, if we could just get down to talking about how it works in real time, because this was a terrible issue with what has happened with CEO Ben Limmer and the kinds of contracts that were put out with TransPro, with consultants, with everything else of which the board had no notice of. Some of it in violation, as you say, of the procurement manual, but others are permitted under what I thought was a giant loophole in that there are deviations. I didn't understand it at all. So if we go through this deviation policy, for one, you're saying that deviations are still permitted, but they're not. You don't have any definition. I thought there was something about. To me, it's deviations should only be permitted for exigent circumstances of some sort. Can you first of all speak to that?
So it said the first thing that we do, if everyone can see my screen, I'm on the actual recommended policy revision, and in policy section 510.03, the first thing that we do is define what a deviation is. That was lacking from the previous manual. So we call out there are two types of deviations: the fully executed contract that is executed without following the procurement manual, and then a modification to a contract that is implemented without following the requirements of the procurement manual. Those are the only two types of, quote, permissible deviations, because in reality, those are the only two types of deviations that there are. The second thing that we do is we call out the requirements for approving of a deviation. So yes, deviations are permissible, provided all of these things that we call out in Section 2 here are adhered to. The first is only the board chair can approve a deviation. So the CEO can make a recommendation to the chair or a proposal or a request, whatever word you want to use there, that he or she, CEO, be allowed to execute a contract or a modification to a contract under these circumstances. And in the circumstances, the board chair needs to understand what that circumstance is via, as Section B identifies, a written description of the circumstances or justification has to be approved in advance. It cannot be ratified after the fact, and we have to ensure that all of the written documentation after everything has been approved is maintained in the procurement file so that if there's ever any question or curiosity about it, we have all that documentation. And then finally, it has to be reported to the full board at the next available board meeting. Then we go on to add a little...
Oh, go ahead, sorry. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Then we just go on to add a little bit more clarity about deviations from the requirements of the procurement manual. That's for that fully executed thing. I want to be clear about what that is. And then deviations to a fully executed contract. I wanted to be clear about that as well.
One of the things I'm wondering about is, so you bring it to the chair, but and then later you're more transparent with the board than it has been in the past. So why wouldn't you at least put that? I'm just thinking it seems to me an appropriate place to just put on the consent, start doing a more robust consent agenda, and put these on there.
And I don't have a preference one way or the other, Commissioner. The school of thought on it is that if the circumstances are such that a deviation is required, then the presumption there is that we as an organization need to act swiftly. I'm not talking about whether or not that's good judgment, bad judgment. Let's just set that aside for a second. There are exigent circumstances such that the agency needs to act swiftly and either needs to execute a contract we don't currently have in order to facilitate an outcome we desperately need, or we need to modify a contract we currently have to mitigate an outcome that we desperately need. So the sense of urgency surrounding the need for the deviation and that being a direct communication between the board chair and the CEO might not lend itself to the amount of time needed to put something like that on a consent agenda before the agency can take action. So this allows
I'm not saying to do that way. I'm saying the opposite way. That I understand having the the board chair act at the time. I think one of the difficulties with this for me, what you presented, is it would help me to see strike-throughs and underlines so we could understand what exactly was being changed. I think that's really important. And so it's a little bit hard to understand without that context. That's what I'm used to looking at something like this so that we know exactly what's going on. I'm not objecting to exigent circumstances having the board of the chair board of directors to sign off. But one thing is, you're saying exigent circumstances. Is that word in here? which I think is important.
So Section 3
there we go, in the
3A
definition.
talks about exigent circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Extreme exigent. I should have taken the extreme out. I apologize.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I wanted to make sure that that language was in there somewhere because I think that that's important, the word exigent. So it's not just, I mean, it looked like it was just being hugely abused and nothing to do with exigent circumstances in the past, to me. And so there's, and what you're saying is a one-time, deviation of, okay, I'm glad that exigent is in there. I'm okay with the process. I thought the consent might be a more prominent and, reasonable place to put it, but that's after the CEO approves it in between under exigent circumstances. But I just think that that's a good place maybe for board members to look and understand.
Well, and if I could offer this insight, the consent agenda is used for approval of contract awards, whereas a deviation, if approved by the board chair, will have already been executed. So there wouldn't, and I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I'm just adding this piece of information to the calculus. The consent agenda is used for yet to be executed awards, whereas a deviation, by the time it gets reported to the board, has already been executed and work already begun.
Right. So I'm just concerned to get the board's full attention to these things in the future, and that there be no. And I know you've said that you would put them at the front. How would they come to us now in the front of the agenda under, instead of buried on page 200? How would it would be in what part?
It's right behind and Danielle can provide a better roadmap for this. It's, if I understand, it's right behind the agenda. The very next thing behind the agenda is the Sole Source Awards report.
No, Mr. Edmondson, what we do is we have it highlighted in the ICEO report, or like the interim chief executive officer's report. So it's verbally reported on by the interim chief executive officer's report, and it is included in that section of the packets.
Okay. I apologize for the misplacement.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand because, so is there, do we have a requirement that it be put in writing to see, within our agenda? That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, that's exactly how we report it, in writing.
But you just said that the CEO would do it verbally, I thought, just now.
Mrs.
It's a written report.
Excuse me, Mrs. John, perhaps you don't, I'm sorry. Mrs. Kemp, since February, when we've implemented this recommendation, after the CEO report, it is a written notation of sole source awards and deviations. It is written in there if there are no sole source or if there are no deviations. It's written in there as part of the report, and orally it's also given. And then we have a backup page that specifically tells you about the sole source, the amount, and why we were doing it, or if there was a deviation. And we've been doing that in the report since February of this year.
Thank you. I think it might be good to have just a little title within our agenda, specifically, a section. It doesn't have to be reported on. It doesn't have to be anything. And I realize that you're trying to make it more transparent and report it to the board. But I think a little title heading in our agenda that a lot of times I would expect it to be nothing. But, that just says something like changes or deviations.
I do believe there is a subtitle under the ICEO report.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be good to break it out. I'm just saying. And so with that, so now let me just, it would only be done under exigent circumstances. So in other words, and I just have to go back to some of the examples that I've seen used not only by that were part of the issues with Mr. Limmer, but even in the past. So if let's say the a CEO, and this isn't about the CEO we have now or anything, I just think we have to really look at this and look about the board understanding and approving these things. So if the CEO wanted to personally hire a person or a company, as they did just recently, for up to $100,000, that is permitted. Can you speak to how that is? What would happen with that now?
Exactly what you see there. That type of a deviation where we would be asked as a procurement department to execute a contract at the direction of a CEO. That is the very definition of a deviation. It is not in accordance with the requirements of the procurement manual. So that contract, before it gets executed or before work begins, implementation, anything like that, that would have to be reviewed and approved by the chair of the board.
Right. So I have a problem that something like that could happen without exigent circumstances. I know you have exigent in there. So let's just say, the new CEO comes in and they just, want to hire their friends or something, or the company they like. So they just do that, and the CEO or the chair of the board, kind of not understanding the history, and 10 years from now, just says, okay, I don't understand what guardrails we have on any of that, except that there would be, I think there needs to be, something in there that says anything that isn't exigent must be brought to the board in advance.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I guess I understand your concern, and if I can say it this way, hopefully it will resonate. By requiring, first of all, there is no condition under which the CEO is permitted, per the procurement manual or board policy, to go out and execute a contract unilaterally. That can't happen. And we did that specifically because it has happened in the past and it created issues. So this recommended revision takes away any ambiguity about the unilateral decision-making or contract executing authority of the CEO. Not able. Secondly, it puts in the hands of the two most senior members of the organization, the chairman of the board and the chief executive officer, it puts in their hands a conversation about whether or not a deviation or a deviated contract, whether or not that contract meets the requirements of exigent circumstances and needing to act swiftly and without the requirements of the procurement manual. So there is a check and balance in the sense that, again, we clearly define the CEO does not have the authority to act unilaterally, and it has to be reviewed. It has to be proposed to the board chair, and the board chair has to review and approve it before the CEO can take action. Those are, in my opinion, again, given that we oftentimes have to do this in those exigent circumstances with a sense of urgency, those are the tightest guide rails that I can think of to put in the board or in the manual and in the policy document to allow the CEO and the board the board chair to act accordingly given those circumstances and to prevent abuse in the future.
Okay. I can appreciate that with the deviations, and then I guess we could get to the regular, when we talk about it, just regular procurement procedure. So as to the deviations, okay. Thank you.
So with respect to a sole
and
source...
Mr. Levinson, we have...
Yes, ma'am.
Were you finished answering Commissioner Smith? Or Commissioner Kemp?
Yes. Thank you.
I would just like to add that with respect to a sole source, it's incumbent upon myself as the director of procurement and the chief financial officer as the owner of the procurement function or the division that the procurement function resides within. It's up to those two positions within the organization to confer and agree that a sole source justification is required or is necessary for a contract award. So in the circumstance where the CEO wants to hire his buddy's consulting firm to do consulting, the procurement manual specifically calls out that a sole source award has to be approved by a contracting officer one level above the contracting officer executing the agreement. So if it's a sole source or a sole source award that's under $100,000, that would be one of our contracting specialists on my staff, and then I would have to review and approve that. I would, and I don't, review and approve any sole source awards without the input and concurrence from the chief financial officer. So we do have safeguards put in place to mitigate that as well.
Okay, and that's something that I think that isn't under this part, the deviation part, but that's something in general that I have concerns about and I think needs to be revised in our procurement procedure, because I don't think that that's appropriate for that kind of and I think that's part of the problem, and it was part of the abuse that took place, is this very internal process that is not reported to the board and is not transparent and accountable. This makes a deviation of those original contracts more transparent and accountable. But the original contract, I think, is something that maybe we'll get to. But as far as the deviation, it looks like that's fixed. The original contracts, I think, is probably more of an issue. Thank you.
All right, and Director Mechanic, you're recognized.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Just listening to this discussion, I looked up the definition of the word exigent, and it just means urgent, which is a very subjective term. I mean, what is urgent to you may not be urgent to me. I think there needs to be some criteria which has built into them some sort of harm that would occur as a result, not just some deadline. We have to get this done by, the end of this month, so we're going to approve a deviation. I think it's got to be built into it, the idea that there's some harm that would occur if this deviation is not approved. So I'm not saying we should rewrite this today. I'm just saying I would like a little more language explaining what that is.
And I will be glad, Director Mechanic, to consult with our legal department and general counsel to make sure that we come up with a more specific definition of exigent or replacement for the single word exigent, and come up with something that's a little bit more specific. I would caution only that you're absolutely right. The term exigent can be subjective, depending on who's reading it and who's processing information. But again, we do have a check and balance in the sense that no one person within the organization is acting unilaterally. There does have to be written justification for why those exigent circumstances exist in the first place. And then the more narrow in scope that we get, that too can present problems in certain circumstances, and that's where legal counsel and general.
As a lawyer, I understand you don't write something so narrowly that nothing qualifies, but you can put in factors that are considered to determine whether something is exigent. And like I say, the concept of harm, I think, should be built into there, because if there's no harm that occurs as a result of a delay, then let's not make that a deviation.
Right. So absolutely, we will work with our legal department, general counsel, to come up with a more descriptive term.
Great, thank you.
So I think we're hearing there that this section it warrants some extra attention and drafting, and we will be watching that without spending the rest of the workshop on this one section. I do have a couple of hands raised, but I wonder if Ms. Stiglitz wants to address the section about emergency procurements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cindy Stiglitz, Interim CFO for HART. I did want to bring up that while we are talking about deviations, which are a form of a sole source, we also have the opportunity, and I don't have the section referenced, so maybe John can somehow find it within his manual there. But we do have a section that focuses on emergency procurements. And I believe that's what Director Mechanic is kind of referring to as far as the imminent nature of a procurement having some implications for health, safety, wealth. There you go, right in front of you. So under those circumstances, we would absolutely want to act swiftly, which would require potentially going through a process that deviates from the normal procurement process, where we don't have time to solicit for a vendor that can address the need. And we did something similar to that when we implemented the barriers in the buses, where it was posing a threat to our patrons. We underwent an emergency procurement in order to address that. So I think exigent versus emergency, there is a distinction there. And again, we are looking here at emergency conditions, which I think are absolutely something we would want to have the latitude to be able to contract for outside of a normal procurement process.
Thank you. And so I'm hearing that, exigent, maybe a sentence that is explaining that exigent doesn't simply mean expedient or convenient or something like that can be wordsmithed before this is brought back.
Correct.
Director Harden, you were recognized.
Hey, I apologize. Got to get all these mutes turned off. I agree with everything that's being said about what we're trying to accomplish here. But again, I think we hire professionals, and we're saying we're putting in place a process where the board chair is going to be the arbiter of exigent or extreme exigent is actually what's written in here. And I just don't see the need to tighten it up much more than that. I think that the board chair is elected by the board, and that in a circumstance where they feel like something is extremely urgent, that we should have that flexibility. So anyway, I like the way it's written now.
And final comment from Commissioner Kemp on this section before we move on with the rest of it.
Thanks. I'd just like to, I think Mr. Mechanics, or say Dave's, comments were well taken in terms of more tightly defining this. Actually, I think we have had oversight issues, and we've had a lot. I think the oversight and the language needs to be tighter. I'm glad to have the emergency section because that's more what I thought. I think that anything that is done in between has to be something that, for some reason, can't wait until the meeting and can't, get board approval. So, and there has to be something to define that rather than, one person's exigent is not another's. And I thought of it more in terms of emergency conditions as this has stated. So I do think that needs more work. And as you stated, not to do here, but I just like to put that out there.
Thank you. And Director McLean, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Adam mentioned, I'm on that camp that agrees that we've hired quite a few good professionals to manage this, to include our procurement process. I think the way it's written right now is fine. Again, as I've mentioned in the past, I think we need to be careful how much we delve into the work that we hire folks to do. So thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Edmondson, we can move on to the next piece.
Excellent. So again, we provided everybody with a copy of the recommended procurement policy, section 5-500 of the board policy manual. This is a very quick summary of those policy changes. The first, as we talked about a little bit earlier, there were some strategic items that are kind of overarching governing philosophies and policies that we have to act within. But there are also specific items that call to board members an action that they, the board, must take. So we wanted to be clear and extract those sections of the manual that contain those specific action items. And they are review and approve contracts in excess of $100,000, participate in the solicitation for legal, as general counsel services, legislative consulting services, and audit services. The specific approval of contracting officers by name, those of us that can execute contracts, the board has to approve all of that. And then the delegations of authority. What authority does the board bestow upon their primary employee, the CEO? And then we also wanted to delineate very specifically board and staff responsibilities. And that really is called into account where we talk about what powers or what responsibilities the board members delegate to the chief executive officer. And then finally, really a very strategic and tactical change for us was to expedite future manual revisions during our continuous improvement process and create an extra layer of ownership for the contents of the manual and the revision process as a whole. And let's go back to this real quick. Again, one of the reasons that we feel that this is a strategically more effective approach for the organization as a whole is there are some antiquated elements of the procurement manual as it relates to how we communicate solicitation materials to vendors, how we accept proposals from vendors. These are very operational and functional in nature. And certainly don't rise to the level of board of directors involvement, but that are still nonetheless, because they're included in the manual, cannot be altered without that board involvement. And so we want to bring to the board those items that are meaningful and have an impact on the organization, rather than those things that are just going to streamline our processes a little bit more. So this is going to help us expedite that improvement process. Some of the manual changes, we did provide a clean copy of what the new manual is going to look like. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
Yes, I think this is Commissioner Smith, and I think before you get into the manual changes, I had actually a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. One is, at our July 20 meeting, we passed a motion for staff to draft material to bring back to us at this workshop that would open the discussion for board involvement in the procurement of executive search teams, at least for an executive search team of a CEO. So we could decide things like whether that's done by RFP or RFQ, which we didn't do in this last search, but we did take a vote and direct staff to bring us back some material to consider about whether we'd want to do that and help guide the criteria and ranking for a CEO or other executive search team. So it was in these two slides that I saw the unchanged piece of, I think it was the slide before this, that still has the unchanged piece of the procurement boards members the board is involved in is just legal, audit, and the CEO. Was that it?
And I apologize if we missed that directive, Commissioner. We will make sure that we revise this section to include language pertaining to the search for an executive recruiting firm and those executive recruiting efforts.
Okay. And so, the other thing is, I heard in your introduction that the sense that it would be onerous and cumbersome for the board to continue the policy that has been longstanding of board approval for any procurement manual changes, but I don't think that they would always go through this level of complete overhaul of the procurement manual, and I don't think it would be too hard for, small changes to appear even on the consent agenda of a board agenda for review of changes to the procurement manual, especially since we're, kind of emerging from a period where these things, required some auditing and outside recommendations. This may not be the moment to be loosening the restrictions on that, in my view.
Well, and if I could, I just wanted to add some clarity. I didn't want to overstate my concerns with having the procurement manual be a board-level document in terms of the effort required by the board. You're right. It's not necessarily onerous of the board to review a recommended change and decide whether or not that's a good change and then approve it accordingly. It is a time-lengthy process. It goes through 2 board meetings, one where we present the recommended changes, they're reviewed, and then another one where those recommended changes are adopted and approved. At least that's my understanding of how we have to present board policy level changes within the organization. That process is an overly complex one and an overly protracted one, given the nature of several of the changes that will need to occur as the procurement department evolves. These are largely procedural, functional. They're largely related specifically to just how we handle and process overall procurement activity. It won't largely be centered in accountability or transparency. It won't have impacts on those types of items. But there are things in the procurement manual, for example, the acceptance of electronic submissions from vendors. That's something that is clearly articulated in the procurement manual of how we have to accept submissions from vendors. So if we wanted to make a change to that in practice, we would have to go through that very protracted process of board review and approval, a very lengthy one. That can sometimes lead to significant inefficiencies, but I think more to the point is it does not lend the procurement manual to its use as a very tactical document where our organization, our procurement organization, could get into that manual and have good step-by-step instructions for how they need to assemble an RFP, how they need to assemble an IFB, what types of documents are supposed to be included in submission responses and things like that. None of those things are meaningful or impactful per se to the board as a whole. They're at the risk of underestimating them. They're procurement process minutia that are just not at the level of requiring board attention at that point in time. And those are the types of things that we would like the ability to be able to change as the procurement process grows and evolves.
But I wouldn't envision that happening a lot frequently, especially right after we do this whole revision. I wouldn't expect a lot of those. Would you? Is it so?
I don't expect a lot of them, but independently, we don't expect them to change with frequency. What we expect is there are certain sections within the procurement manual that are, as of today, still under development. We're working through a new purchasing card program. We're working through very specific guidance on how evaluation committees for procurements are supposed to be structured, the tasks that evaluation committees are supposed to undertake, how those items are supposed to be handled in different circumstances based on the type of project and whether or not, I'm getting a little bit too down into the weeds, but there are still undeveloped sections of the procurement manual that over the course of the next 12 to 18 months will need to change. So yes, there will be a little bit more frequent changes occur on the front end of the process than on the back end of the process. But as we change documents, as process documents, as we change department names, as we change department functions, as we change systems. There may be a change in how the procurement function is taken on, and you will see those types of changes in the future. They're not onerous for the board. They're not overly complex or cumbersome for the board. I just see the vast majority of them as being not elevated to the level of board attention.
Maybe you can think of some way to put some of that stuff in consent agenda just to maintain the board review would be my thought. But Director Harden also has his hand up at this time. You're recognized, Director Harden. Director Harden?
So, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So as to the current line of discussion, the proposed minor revisions to the purchasing manual would just be made and published by staff is what you're suggesting or recommending, or you're stating that they would still come to the board for approval, they just wouldn't be this public hearing process?
What we are recommending is what the procurement department is recommending is that any changes that are needed to the procurement manual, they would be proposed to the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, by the head of the procurement department, and then the Chief Financial Officer would concur that those changes are needed and are effective and would concur with whatever's being decided upon, and then those concurred changes would be presented to the CEO for the CEO's review and approval.
Okay. So reserving judgment on that, I just wanted some clarity of what you saw the process exactly as the process you were proposing was. I apologize. But my question, the reason I raised my hand was back to Chairman Smith's initial comments, and I think it's more about this, what is the role of the board in this process? And I'm sensitive to what Director McLean said, and I think that it's accurate. We hire professionals. We expect them to do their jobs. But I think where I've seen a breakdown, in my opinion, has been at the strategic planning level, the setting and the vision level, and that this does overlap with the purchasing process in a way that I haven't seen it work at this organization yet. And so to go to some real-world examples, to sit in a board meeting and be voting on a procurement for, say, new buses when somebody decided they're going to be diesel instead of electric, and then we have a 45-minute conversation about why we're not buying electric buses, but the only thing on the agenda is a proposal to order specific buses. So, it seems like prior to that solicitation going out, that somebody in strategic planning or operations committee should have reviewed, we're going to put a solicitation out for this many buses, here's the maintenance schedule, here's the reason we need them based on, and that logic was affirmed. Then the solicitation went out, then it comes to the whole board to be approved. And then, I have another example, and I think this goes to 3 or 4 things I've seen over the 2 years of my tenure, but it's for example, the FDOT grants. So the staff makes the decision completely on their own to solicit grants, and then is awarded the money at some point in the future, and then says, well, we're going to put out a solicitation for, say, a transit-oriented development study. And then we have people on the board who are subject matter experts on things like transit-oriented development, TIF districts. We have elected officials that are attorneys that have extensive environmental backgrounds that, bring a lot of expertise to the table. I think it's why we're on the board. And then I've been told at meetings, well, the limitations of the grant are this. And yet in other meetings that I've had on larger topics with, say, the Secretary of FDOT and the person who runs the grants, I'm told, I ask on the side, well, what's up with this? Oh, well, that's the way the grant was written. So we tied our own hands, and, and it's not an efficient use of public money, nor are we getting the outcome that we need. And, when we look at, say, a grant that was written to study a certain purpose, then having board input on the way that grant's written to make sure we can study it. I think another example of that is this downtown, these free Uber rides that are funded through an FDOT grant that we're administering, the Downtowner or whatever it's called, and there was a limitation written into that grant that requires that the service be point to point, and that there's no other ability to move the money around. So now we're stuck administering this thing, and it's money that can't be used for real transit, like a real downtown circulator that could, say, carry people from the streetcar in Ybor through downtown over to the Tampa General parking lots and back through downtown and back over Ybor, or something that would look like transit to me. But, again, we have this grant and our hands are tied. So, these are the big issues for me. I fully trust y'all on all this minor stuff that we've been talking to through the call up till now. But these bigger picture issues, setting a vision, understanding, being involved in discussions prior to grants going out the door, and being involved in discussions, again, like Commissioner Smith said, about, are we going to do an RFQ or an RFP for an executive director, who's setting the salaries, these type things should be brought to committees prior. Anyway, I'll stop talking, but that's what I'm really looking forward to come out of this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. To address some of what Mr. Harden said, I think part of the problem is all of those things that you mentioned are as I believe, in the Transit Development Plan, which the Transit Development Plan was put together by Tyndale Oliver, which wasn't necessarily a choice we confirmed, but not a RFP that we were involved in expressing what we wanted from that, and where, we weren't, the different possibilities weren't brought to us with maybe a staff evaluation of them, much like an audit contract or the legislative lobbyists or the other things we've talked about, which to me are much less central to how we move forward. But we need to start, I would say, getting involved in that transit development plan, which is, by the way, on the next strategic planning committee. And I think we really need to start looking at that thing and start taking out things that have been put in there that are low priorities and start prioritizing and starting to direct that. But going back to this procurement procedure, Commissioner Smith, I very much share the comments that you made with regards to this. When this presentation was started today, we were told about three things that the law firm listed in the investigation in terms of the procurement procedures, and that was to strengthen the one-time deviation and look at that, make it a better policy, to make this all more transparent, and to look at the solicitation of vendors and gifts. Those were the three things that they put down. What I think has been the problem is actually there's been too little oversight by the board of the procurement manual, and to move in the opposite direction. I'm very uncomfortable with this time, with this idea at this time that somehow that this procurement manual should be not under the purview of the board any longer, but would make all of those abuses that occur possible again. In fact, it would make it far worse. I think it's very important that, seeing that we had this terrible abuse by the CEO, procuring even things that they shouldn't have, like consultants and lawyers, much less the other. I would say that the procurement manual should stay exactly where it is, and I don't see it as being that onerous to put small revisions and things like that on the consent agenda to give us notice, but to really firmly put it under the board's oversight. And I'll say then too, in terms of the specifics that we were just, and I know you're going back to the beginning of the whole idea of this, which was announced at the beginning. I think that would be a step backwards, not a step forwards of what we need to do. But the other was that I think the consultants' contracts, I would like to look at this, of 25,000 or more, the consultants' contracts should at least go on consent, so that the board is aware of these contracts, that are done. These, as you said, where the, internally, the CEO just gets to hire whomever for under 100,000. And I think it's really important that the board have notice of that and that be on consent, so that if we're not, if we have objections or have issues or thoughts to share about that, that can be something that is transparent and accountable, which it has not been. So that isn't one of the things that was mentioned to revise, but I really think that it would be important to look at that and have that be something that could be generated.
Okay, and I appreciate the input, and I am taking everything that we are talking about with a grain of salt. There are a couple things that I want to just lay out. First, I'm having a big major storm blow through here, so if I get disconnected or lose power, I apologize. The second thing is I want to be clear that the procurement manual, at no point in it, whether under board, complete authority, or otherwise, the procurement manual does not provide unilateral contract executing authority to any individual within the organization, up to and including the CEO. We have to follow procurement procedures for every single purchase that we make, irrespective of dollar amount and irrespective of contract type. So the reason that, and I mean, whether this is politically correct, incorrect, or not, the reason that we are where we are today is the people that ran afoul of that process. And maybe I'm just being a little myopic in my perspective, but we already had rules in place and the rules were broken. And I don't think that those rules were broken because we lacked clarity on what the rules were. I just think they were broken because nobody took the time to fully understand them and read them and abide by them. At no point do we promote or provide for unilateral contract understanding or contract execution at any point in time in the procurement manual. The second thing that we do is we take everything that's listed in the board policy, that policy section 5-500, and we transfer it verbatim over into the procurement manual. So there's no rule that gets set in that policy that won't make it into the procurement manual. What we do, and the reason that we are recommending doing it that way, is so that those procedural items in the manual can be affected and can be revised and can be evolved as the organization grows, whether it's growth by additional income and we have to change our overall procurement function and approach, or whether it's just a change that comes down from a best practice recommendation during a triennial review or during a conference that one of us attends. There are those types of changes that will occur from time to time. Again, not onerous, not problematic, but they are incorporated in the procurement manual and are elevated with the level of importance just the same as one-time deviations. They share no distinction in whether or not the board should or shouldn't weigh in on them. So I hear what your concerns are. I'd be more than glad to go back with legal and general counsel and figure out a different approach if that's the overall input and consensus from the board members. But I just want to be clear that we have safeguards in place and have had safeguards in place.
Mr. Edmondson, I think you said at the very beginning of today's workshop that you were hoping for a spirited discussion on this topic.
I was.
And I think you're getting it, and it's all very important. I think we're having a very fruitful discussion. Director Harden pointed out some really great examples of of things that that we need to consider that is on the board's minds. And I think that this discussion is very, very timely to be airing the stuff and fleshing it out and coming to a better understanding of how we might improve things. And thanks to Commissioner Kemp also for the points she was making. So look forward to what you will be bringing back from that, and I look forward to seeing what's next in your presentation.
Danielle, if you're still on the call, you're probably going to have to re-invite me to share my screen since I lost power there for a minute. My whole computer shut down, and I'm not sure I still have that ability.
Yes, give me one moment.
All right, are we back up and running?
I think so.
All right. Okay. So this was where we left off. I'm going to go ahead then and do a quick summary review of the manual.
So, John,
changes.
we cannot see your screen
as
yet.
we said. Oh goodness. Let me. Oops. Let's do this.
Now, while we are, okay, all right, good, we're about there.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, you go. Thank you.
Okay. So we, again, quick summary, quick review of the manual changes themselves. As we've said over and over again, we wanted to identify those board-level strategic policies, stick them into that actual board policy document, but we want to make sure that we know exactly what those are, and that we don't just overlook them, or that we don't inadvertently in directors of the future that they don't inadvertently recommend a change to one of those board-level policies. In some of their recommendations. So we specifically call that out with a change to the formatting and the language. We bold, underlined it, and italicized all of the direct citations from the board policy. The second thing that we did was we built into the manual that none of that language that is bold, underlined, or italics can be changed without the approval and passage of a board resolution. So that made it very, very kind of rock solid for us. We want to make sure that we don't step on those inadvertently. The second thing we did was we changed.
Excuse me, but just real quickly, that was a little confusing to me. Now I get it, but I would like to have, if it's possible, a strike-through underline version of the revisions. We can really see exactly what's being changed. Thank you.
I'd be glad to provide that to all the board members. Excuse me. From a formatting and aesthetic perspective, the previous manual read very much so like a legal document, and it was. I mean, there's no denying that. But it did not have a really good information flow that aligned with procurement procedures and how we as practitioners kind of go through the procurement process. And so we reorganized everything to have it with a little bit better flow. We refreshed the appearance a little bit so it doesn't put everybody to sleep while we're reading it. And then we tried to make it a little less legal and a little more functional. So we used a little bit of a different language, kind of took the lawyer language out, no offense toward my lawyers in the audience, kind of took the lawyer language aspect of it out and tried to put it into language that we as practitioners would recognize and that our customers or interested stakeholders would recognize and understand if they read it. And there were some things that just quite frankly confused us, and so we just tried to simplify or laymanize those confusing parts so that we could understand them. We updated the table of contents. This, believe it or not, was a very big problem for those of us trying to navigate that 140-page document to try to figure out where something was. The previous table of contents was just a level one list of headers, didn't provide any additional depth to it. So we added some subsection headers so that we can actually use that navigation function as a navigation function, and it's a lot easier for us as practitioners to find the relevant procurement items that we need to deal with, and then act accordingly. We added a forward. This may seem like a fluff piece, but I think it's very important. I will be just direct and honest. The procurement organization here at Hart, but in a lot of public entities, we are largely seen as functionary cashiers for the organization. We just kind of buy what people want, and they don't really think about why we do the things that we do or why a centralized procurement process is important to an organization. So we just wanted to add a little bit of insight into that and make sure that we really establish the procurement department as a collaborative partner in the process and not just a functionary to help complete a transaction. We wanted within the procurement department a set of values and a vision and mission of our own that aligned with the mission and vision and values of the organization so that we can keep ourselves accountable for the customer service that we deliver to our internal customers and to our external customers, the vendors, but most importantly, that we align with the mission of the organization to keep those customers as the central focus of everything that we do. We felt that was important. We want our departmental partners in our organization to understand what that philosophy and what those tenets are, and we want them to hold us accountable. We want them to tell us when we're not delivering good customer service or when we're not being true collaborative partners. We welcome that, and we use that information to improve our performance moving forward. As we kind of alluded to and talked about a little bit earlier, we establish a hierarchy of ownership and accountability for changes that are going to be introduced into future versions of the procurement manual. If we're going to recommend that the board not necessarily be bothered with minor minutia style changes to procedure that are included in the manual, we got to make sure we have some accountability and some ownership of that process if it doesn't measure up to the Hart standard. And so we require the head of the procurement department, the CFO, and the CEO to sign an affirmation statement that they have reviewed all of the contents of the procurement manual and any recommended revisions, that they concur that those revisions are necessary to the effective procurement function for the organization, and that they want to see them implemented as soon as they are approved. We reorganized the content a little bit. We talked about this already. We reorganized that content to make sure that it aligned with our contemporary framework of procurement process. We took the elements that are consistent to procurement planning and put them in a procurement planning section. We took several elements of every solicitation. There are certain components in every solicitation that are required, no matter the size of the solicitation, no matter the scope of the project, and no matter the deliverables on the back end. So we consolidated all of those patchwork items of the old manual into a single section in the manual. Did a lot of that, did a lot of consolidated language efforts. We are currently working on and will continue to develop a frequently asked questions component to the procurement manual. This is where it becomes very effective for our internal customers and external stakeholders such as board members and senior leaders in our departments. We field a lot of questions every single day. How does procurement do this? Or why do we have to do it that way? Why can't I just go to the vendor I want to go to? So we kind of present those questions and then present the answers to give the overarching policies, the overarching philosophies, and then we guide them to a section in the procurement department in the procurement manual, for more in-depth response to that question. That will be an ongoing, ever-changing process. I don't think we'll ever stop fielding questions, and quite frankly, I don't want to. Like I said, as you can tell from my demeanor, I love talking about procurement. I can do it all day, and I will if y'all let me. And then another one, the biggest one that we have talked about here, the Carlton Fields report made several recommendations for the organization as a whole, but there were 3 of them specific to the procurement function, and we made the changes within the manual to incorporate their recommendations accordingly. The next steps for us, and I know there's going to be more discussion about the individual changes, and that's okay, but I just wanted to line out what our next steps are. we are going to continue to update the manual for formatting revisions, a little bit of refinement. There are some areas where perhaps the grammar it isn't quite up to snuff. We want to have it flow a little bit better. And then we are going to continue to work on the new sections that we're introducing into the future versions of the procurement manual, but that are still in development and that may or may not be ready for introduction into the manual by the time we get to that November period. All of the new sections will undergo this review and approval process where we as procurement staff develop what we think the change needs to be. We present it to the CFO. We let the CFO poke holes in it. And hopefully they do a good job of that. And then we as a collective present it to the CEO. We let the CEO poke holes in it. And then once we fill all the holes, we re-present it to the CEO and hopefully gain their blessing to include it in the procurement manual. Once we've done all of that stuff and we've agreed upon here within this workshop what should or shouldn't be included moving forward, whether or not there needs to be a second workshop at a later date down the line, we can iron all that stuff out. The next step, once we finalize all of the input from the board and the workshop activities, is a legal review. Legal and general counsel were gracious enough to give me a very, very quick general review of the document because it is such a monster. They want a lot more time to play around with it, and I don't blame them. So once we get to the point where we know exactly what everyone's input is, we've incorporated everything as practical as possible, and we come up with what we, as an organization, feel is a final draft version of the recommended revisions, we're going to put it to legal and general counsel. We're going to let them run over it with a fine-tooth comb, tell us what we did wrong, and tell us what we need to change. Once all that's done, the next step is an affirmation vote by the Board of Directors on September 14th to initiate the amendment process. And this is where you give us your formal blessing to amend the policy and the manual accordingly, and then we will go forth and conquer accordingly. And then we will represent on September 28th the first proposed amended policy document, and then the board members will discuss et cetera, and then we return at the next available board meeting, which is November 2nd, and ask for final review and adoption. That kind of ends the presentation part of it. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of questions. I'm here and ready to answer them as best I can.
Thank you very much. If you will, any board members who have questions or comments, raise their hand. And I see Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Well, I think this has been, like you said, an incredibly fruitful discussion. I really appreciate Director Harden and Director Mechanic's comments and input into this. I think it's really important because it broadens this discussion. As I said before, I'm still, first off, I'm very concerned about what is already permitted and happened under the scenario with Ben Limmer. As we all know, as part of that investigation, TransPro was hired over a year ago to replace employees in our organization and make important decisions about the structure of HART. TransPro effectively hollowed out our top management, hired a search firm, and replaced that team with persons associated with TransPro. I want to make sure that if we're going to change our policy here, that we have policy that protects us from ever having that happen again. I think that's extremely important. I think it's important to keep it under, as I said before, the board oversight. I will say that at the county, we have an amazing procurement person, Scott Strummer, and I've always been incredibly impressed by him, but I had no idea until I talked to him at length that I think he spent something like 15 years at the county and like 15 years in Pasco, or maybe less at the Hillsborough County, but 15 years in Pasco. I believe something like a 37-year career. But importantly, he was a master trainer across the country over procurement. And I'm not surprised because he is so thoughtful and so able to talk about procurement with me when I call him with questions or concerns. And I had asked him if he would be willing, and we wouldn't even have to pay him, pay the county or anything. They would offer these services to have him involved in this process. You had stated at the beginning, John, that we had like this board policy and then you take the manual out from under it. But at the policy that we have in front of us is something like a page long, and the county has a procurement policy which we approve year after year, which is 118 pages long. So I don't think that what we have proposed is what we need to be protective of HART and of the taxpayers' investment going forward, particularly when we've seen such terrible abuse that has really hurt HART terribly in the last couple of years. And I think it would be very good at this point to involve Scott Stromer for me in this process, and I think for we would find that to be very, very helpful. He had told me that he had been contacted by the Port Authority to help them because they were looking for expertise to help them redo their policy, and he has been just working with them because they requested it. So I'd like to see that from HART. And I also think that until we have robust procurement policy under the board, that we should not be at any time thinking about moving this from under the board, because I think we have, as Mr. Harden mentioned and Mr. Mechanic mentioned, I think we have some still issues with this, more the deep issues associated with the things that Mr. Harden brought forward. So I think those are where we need to move from here. I look at it as hopefully being I'm thinking a much longer process. If you just wanted to maybe get the policies that you mentioned that Carlton Fields had concerns with, put before the board, but then we undertook a much greater process with these bigger issues.
Thank you. And Director Schischler, you're recognized.
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button. Okay. I listened to this session. Yes, there's been very interesting parts of it. I think that the initial presentation made by John is very good. It's very thorough. There's probably a couple holes in it, but I think this is also for F. So we have to give that due. I think we have the expertise in house. I've been impressed with what I've seen. I know that the Stiglitz is a tight ship, and I believe that we will get the document that we need. I do have a question. John, were the holes from the Limmer experience one?
Well, so the short answer, Director, is yes, they were, in the sense that we provided a more concise definition of what a one-time deviation was. I would put forth that the issues with Mr. Limmer were I guess that's can I say he just did not take the time to inform himself of the rules before he took action. Okay. And he didn't take the time to consult anyone before he took that action. And I don't know in my professional capacity and in my experience as a procurement practitioner in the public sector, I don't know that I can write a rule that will make someone stop and think more thoughtfully about their actions before taking action. The only thing I can do is write into place the actions they're supposed to take if they bother to think about them. And those actions were largely already there.
Okay.
So I don't. So yes,
you've attempted to fix these, and as far as your professional opinion, you have the plugs in place that need to make sure this can't happen or shouldn't happen again. You never prevent everything. Okay?
Right.
As I understand it. I just, good comments, good questions. I said we leave it to the professionals to finish their proposal, finish what they've got. If Mr. Edmondson feels the need to go outside, then quite possibly with the proper following the proper guidelines. If he needs another professional to bounce it off of, that'd be one thing. I would be wary of bringing in someone else. I just want to make sure that we don't turn this into a document where, my father used to equate a camel was a horse built by committee, and where everybody gets their own spice and variety of particular effect that they want in, and then we have a document that's so cumbersome that we need somebody with a law degree just to buy paper clips. So I think that we need to let the process keep going. I think that we probably need another discussion. Sorry. I think we do need probably another discussion to ensure that some of these minute issues from Carlton Fields are fixed and flood, maybe by more directors being involved. I mean, 6 directors is not a quorum even make, so we're missing expertise in discussion purposes. Other than that, I think we're on the right track. I think that we're getting where we need to be, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson, you are probably, I assume, looking at other procurement manuals for reference as you consider what we can change here. Since while we're at this big overhaul, you are looking at other manuals. Possibly the county's manual would be a good reference. Just double checking examples.
We've taken input from resources at the county level. Yes, Hillsborough County. We looked at the airport's procurement manual. We looked at the Port Authority's procurement manual. We also looked at transit agencies in the state of Florida to see how they outline their procurement processes, and then we looked at several procurement manuals from just nationwide transit agencies that I've worked with in the past. And that I have network connections with who were able to provide their information. So this is definitely in keeping with transit industry procurement practices, but it also takes into consideration some things that are unique to Florida, and then some things that are just good public purchasing practice.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of little comments. We're starting with in the procurement manual. Chapter 15 addresses the disadvantaged business enterprises and small business enterprises, and nothing is changed there so far, but it seems like this might be a good opportunity to improve our efforts, given that it seems to me that what we have there is saying we have goals of DBE, SBE, enterprises, assistance. When the funding is federal or state according to their rules and policies, but maybe this would be a good moment to broaden that, to set some goals for making inclusion of and preference of disadvantaged businesses, small businesses, minority-owned businesses in projects that are funded, say, by someday, hopefully, a local sales tax or other funding sources.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There is the procurement department has been working collaboratively over the course of the last few months to develop a more robust SBE program for the agency as a whole. That program is not completed, still in development, and then once it is completed, we will obviously incorporate the components of that program that are action items for the procurement department into the manual. The DBE program, again, there are the federal requirements that we obviously need to follow and adhere to, and those are going to remain unchanged as long as the law does. But within that, we can still expand the DBE program, SBE falling into that as well. We can still expand the DBE program accordingly, as long as we're safeguarding those federal requirements. And I will still continue to work with the Community Development Department to make sure that we are doing that and that we are moving that forward effectively.
Great. And a small comment, since you are at the grammar combing level, this would be a good opportunity to update and use a consistent style for gender pronouns that is more in line with contemporary sensibilities and values in our community, and modernize that throughout.
Yes, ma'am. We'll look into that as well.
All right. Any other comments from board members? A small thought I had looking through this is that in Chapter 13, you talk about unsolicited offers, and I was wondering if it's necessary there to restate the dollar amount threshold applies to them as well, or is that, and it probably is, but just a comment that dollar amount, all the dollar amount thresholds apply throughout to solicited or unsolicited proposals.
Sure, and we can call that out specifically, but the intent behind the section on unsolicited proposals is that we conduct an internal review of the proposal to determine whether or not it's a project that we as an organization need to move forward with first. And then if we do need to move forward with it, is it something that is readily available out in the marketplace and we need to go out and do a competitive solicitation for, or is it something that warrants a sole source award? On either one of those paths, all of those other thresholds and procurement requirements and board interaction and all that other stuff kicks in. So really, the unsolicited was just to give guidance for how we review the proposals that we receive.
That's what I thought, but just to glad to clarify that. And Ms. Stiglitz, do you have anything you want to add before we close?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to reinforce and kind of again leave you with the thought that when we approached the behemoth that's before you in the procurement manual, and trying to do a couple things. Number one, keep intact the board's desire as far as a policy goes, but then allow that manual to be bifurcated into what I would consider to be more of an operational, almost like a standard operating procedure that is definitely reflective of the board policy, but not such that it cannot be modified to allow staff the flexibility to approach procurement in a progressive way. So by no means are we trying to remove the authority, the oversight, and certainly the input from the board on a very important part of our operations, which is procurement. So when we approach this, it was more to make sure that the board has a policy by which we are guided, but also allows us the flexibility from an operational standpoint to do the job in the most efficient, effective way. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that we are not trying to by any way, usurp the power of the board. We appreciate your input, and certainly it has guided us in coming to you with this option that you saw today.
Thank you. And while you're here, I should congratulate Ms. Stiglitz on behalf of the board for that grant that I mentioned at the top of the meeting that we got from Kathy Castor and federal dollars for $2.7 million for electric buses, and because that is a direct result of Ms. Stiglitz's application back in May for a bus and bus facilities grant, and this is the second year we've gotten that. So thank you, Ms. Stiglitz.
Thank you. We're excited about that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can I just throw in a thank you too? Thank you. Great job.
All right. If there is anything else, Mr. Edmondson, any other board members?
I think that the only thing that I want to present at this point is, and I will obviously have a conversation with Lena and Danielle and Cindy and Carolyn and kind of our chief leadership staff there. It was a lot of good input, a great discussion. Thank you first and foremost for all of the input. It is very helpful to gain an understanding of how the board perceives this manual, but also how they perceive our approach to it. So it's very helpful. Thank you. What we will do is, I think we will have a meeting and confer to determine whether or not another workshop is more appropriate, to where perhaps, because the board members present have made some substantial recommendations for change and have given a voice that perhaps they don't have an appetite for the complete direction that we were taking it. So we want to retool a little bit and then represent our revision recommendations back in perhaps another workshop. That's what I want to talk about with the leadership here at Hart, and then determine what our next steps are going to be after that.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Stewart, you're recognized.
This is Carolyn House Stewart, Interim CEO. It is my recommendation that we will come back to the board with a second workshop, and I will make certain that before that workshop, every member of the board receives the red line copy of what we're dealing with, so you can have that ahead of time to review before the workshop.
Thank you very much. I think that's a good direction. You can see that there's some real interest here in seeing this through, and I want to thank you, Mr. Edmondson, for taking us through these 2 hours of really meaty discussion, fruitful discussion, and helping to guide the discussion. The presentation was great and thorough, and I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Is there anything else from anyone?
I don't have anything else. No, ma'am, okay. I do not have anything else.
Great. Then, seeing no other hands raised by the board, the workshop is adjourned. And thank you, everybody. Stay safe and have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.